So after this cup, we're officially at the halfway point now, because we got all the DLC courses, but there's just as many DLC cups as there is normal cups. So it's crazy to think that I'm like, wow, it's like I'm on the last cup. Well, kind of, still got plenty more to do after this. And I think part of that is just, my fault for how long I took to actually get back to doing this series. And that's probably partly why I'm like, dang, this is going on for like forever. And it's like, yeah, well, technically, yeah, because it took me a while to get back to this. But I am glad I'm at least, seeing this through and finishing it. Now, I gotta be honest, in my previous recording that I made for this series, that turn that I just took not too long ago up there that I barely made was the most difficult turn I had to do in the entirety of any track in this game. And that turn specifically, when I first recorded it and then scrapped it due to some issues, recording issues that I had. But that turn specifically was the result of at least 4 to 5 resets. And I think because of that, I'm just like, see, that's what ended up happening a lot of the time. And I think because of that, every time, I didn't remember honestly what cup that this track was in, but when I was recording, I was ready for it to show up, and I was like, when it did, I was just like, oh no, here we go. But luckily this time around, it actually was not as bad as last time. So I'm very grateful for that. And it's like, speaking of, tracks and cups and everything, I was kind of talking a little bit about it last time, but I'm honestly very curious as to how Nintendo devises, their cups and everything, what track goes into what cup. Because I feel like what ends up happening a lot of the time is you got, some cups, like the Triforce Cup and the Crossing Cup that we did last time, where it's like they have some, very specific game related themes to them, and then sometime later I think there's the Fruit Cup for the Yoshi's Island course, and so there's some that's very specified on basically what tracks go into the cup. At least one of the tracks, revolve around the theme, and this one kind of also has that too. This being the Bell Cup, they have a Super Bell Subway, which is going to be the next track that's going to come up. So they kind of do that too. I don't feel like it's quite the same, just because, this is Mario Kart, and it's like, wow, yeah, it's a Super Mario Bros. 3D world, inspired course. It's not as, drastic as, Legend of Zelda or Animal Crossing, but it still, has its theming. But then you got, Special Cup always has to include Rainbow Road, that's just the thing. And then, you kind of assume Mushroom Cup is going to have the most basic and kind of beginner player-friendly type of courses, just because, it's always been that introductory, very much course of just trying to ease people into things. But then I feel like you get a lot of gray area once you kind of get into the middle and end areas, because, at some point it just feels like you kind of just gotta throw every course in so that it has somewhere to go in the cup. So I wonder, what criteria, if they have, a set criteria list that Nintendo uses to decide what goes into what. Because I'm sure they've got, some sort of placement, but at the same time, I also wouldn't be surprised if, once you get into a lot of those middle cups where it can kind of be whatever it feels like. If at some point they just go, you know what, we haven't placed this cup yet, it's kind of middle of the pack, just put it in like the shell cup or banana cup or something. But I don't know, I've never done research on it. But I do like how in Mario Kart World they have some new designs for cups, especially with the Knockout Tour cups, where it's like kind of more getting a little bit more, modern to some of like the power-ups and other things that we're kind of getting used to seeing in some of the new games that have been coming out. Because I feel like you've always had the original cups, kind of like mushroom, banana, shell, and like special cup and all those. You've kind of like always had those original cups, but at the same time, I feel like with there being, a new kind of era, and honestly, at a certain point, you just get, especially with this game, where you just have so many cups, like, we're going to see a lot of it that in the special cups, it really just feels like they're just like, I don't know, just take like some item and call it good. I feel like the, fact that the very last cup in the DLC is Spiny Shell cup is, like, very fitting. But there's, like, some in there that it's, like, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure one of the cups is literally just a Rock Mario power-up from Galaxy 2. And so at some points you're just like, I feel like they were like, hey, whatever we can put on there, that is an item that works well enough, just do it. So I always think that's kind of funny. But, at the end of the day, it's, as long as it works, and gonna be honest, I don't really feel like, I personally bat an eye to it all that much, because, this game just has tons and tons of, content in general, so I'm like, no matter what they name, the cups after, I'm just, glad we got all the courses we did, and honestly, I feel like most of them are, are pretty good hits. But it made me curious on how they plan on either, kind of improving, like, World and adding DLC to it, or even, if we're looking probably a lot further into the future, how they would expand the Mario Kart formula. Because I feel like nowadays you kind of have this thing that it's like with each, Mario Kart that comes out, it feels like there kind of has to be, a new gimmick involved. Because at one point, I felt like it was just, we went from, oh, it's Mario Kart, but with more characters, better graphics, and all that kind of thing. But I feel like at a certain point, probably in my opinion, around more the GameCube area, with Double Dash, where they were like, hey, the mechanic is you got two racers at once, and then you went to Wii, and it was like the mechanic is, a lot to do with the Wii Remote motion controls. And then we got, like, gliders. And then, like, after the gliders, it was like, now we're doing anti-gravity, and then Mario Kart World's like, okay, well, now you can ride on rails, you can jump off walls, and, it always feels like there's kind of a new gimmick that is always planned on being added, and it's like, I wonder at what point, you'd kind of like run out of gimmicks, or it would, just start feeling like more and more repetitive. So it's like, I always wonder, how, when you have a series, like, assuming that, you know, it would continue, you know, how would they go about continuing it? And gonna be honest, I don't really have any necessarily any ideas off the top of my head on, like, you know, what you could really do at the moment to, like, change things up. So, you know, I'll be interested to see kind of how it works going forward, but it's just one of those things where it's like, you kind of wonder if the series will ever reach a stopping point, or if it'll kind of, you know, just be forever going, because I feel like, you know, with each new generation that comes out, it's like, it feels like you gotta, you know, match it with, like, the new Mario Kart, the new Mario Party, like that kind of thing. But, you know, who knows? I'm not super tech savvy in game development, you know. I'm like, I can understand how to do a little bit of, like, code and tech stuff, but I don't do much of that stuff outside of, like, randomizers and that kind of thing, so who knows what goes into all that. I certainly am not an expert in that area, but I am at least, you know, interested to see what they'll do for the future, since, you know, my first Mario Kart was 64, so I'd love to stick around as long as the series sticks around. But anyway, that was the Bell Cup. That was the last of the normal cups. I'll see you next time when we start the special cups. See you guys!